Welcome all to another edition of Legal Tech Week, the show where we talk about what happened this week in legal tech and innovation. It's September 19th, 2025, and I am Bob Ambrogi. I have the blog Law Sites and the podcast Law Next, and we got a mantle for you today. Just us guys, as Victor said before we started recording, we can mansplain to you what happened in legal tech this week. So hope you're ready for that. Our panelists will go around and do some quick introductions. Reese, you want to kick it off?
Sure. So I'm Reese Tipshan. I'm the editor-in-chief for the legal tech article at law.com, also known as Legal Tech News.
All right, and Joe.
Joe Patrice from Above the Law and Thinking Like a Lawyer podcast. I am, I'm excited to join yet again. I'm having a Tootsie Roll, Tootsie Pop, so we're going to
Tootsie
see how
Pop
many
Patrice.
licks it. Yeah, we're going to see how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll, Tootsie Pop here.
Appreciate that experiment.
Mm.
Live on our show. And Victor.
Hi everyone, Victor Lee. I am the managing editor for the ABA Journal. I would make a joke about the Man Show and Jimmy Kimmel, but yeah, I don't want to get us in trouble.
Mm.
Hey, we're still here. The FCC hasn't shut us down yet, so that's the good news. So Victor, we had a lot of stuff I want to talk about this week, but I'm kind of wanting to start with your story, but probably not for the reason that you picked your story. I was really fascinated by a subset of the story, which is the tech part of it, the tech part of the survey. But
Oh yeah, no, that was why I
yeah.
picked it. I mean, it's just
Oh,
I
okay.
can't, I didn't write the headline, so yeah.
Oh, all right. So you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so I mean, well, ALM, they do like a mid-year associates survey every year. I actually did it when I was there, like a long time ago. I think I did not like I did the whole thing, but I wrote the feature that would go with the data when it came in and whatnot. And um, so yeah, this year they released the results, and they said that with the associates, that they look at third, fourth, and fifth year associates at law firms, and law firms. And what was most on their mind was well, the Trump administration, whether their firm made a deal with him or not. But then what's relevant to us was that they were concerned about AI and whether or not entry-level jobs would be replaced by artificial intelligence. About 56% of the firms in the survey, at least one associate complained about technology and said they would like to tell the managing partner about the problems if they had the chance. Some complained that security software was slowing down their laptops, saying that it was outdated. And 34% of associates, so like a third, said they felt that the biggest threat to their legal career was replacement by technology. So, there's some anxiety out there. I mean, one third, but still, that's it's definitely on their minds, and we've been talking about it on the show. And I mean, the outdated technology is also kind of interesting too. Just these are these firms you think they'd be able to afford better stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to kind of get these surveys back. I remember getting them. I would always read through so they had like I don't know if that's still the case how they do it. They would have like like the scores that they would like rate things on it, and then they would have like the free form, like I'm gonna write whatever I want here in this box. It's always interesting to kind of read the things that they would say in the box, and then just kind of figure out like like what was on their minds and things like that. So, but when I did it, obviously way back when it was pre AI, and like I think they were most concerned at that point about just wages, and like I think they're just coming off the Great Recession, so they're worried about job security. So, but I mean, yeah, it always reflects sort of what's going on, and this is what's going on now.
Part of what I thought was so fascinating about it was the whole laptop thing. If you
Yeah.
click through from your story to the ALM story on the tech part of the survey, it's like the lead of the story is that the associates are all complaining about the crappy laptops they have and mice that don't work and this shit equipment they have, to the extent where some of them are going out and buying their own stuff because the firm won't give them tech that works. I thought it was it's so funny to read that, given we're talking so much about the sophisticated technology available to big law, and these AI tools that they're all using, Harvey and Lexis and whatever else. And here the associates, mid-level associates, biggest complaint is getting crappy laptops and the fact that the partners won't put up the money to get them some better equipment.
The
It's fine.
2024 survey also kind of found the same thing, like a huge, number of associates, just complaining about the tech they have, the computers, like the programs, it's just completely out of date or really slow. Um, it kind of speaks to like what are the priorities of like the IT team, and like do people just see AI and they go, okay, we want that, and they don't really think about, well, we have to first build a foundation on which we can use AI and actually have like, equipment. Like, you always just go for the shiny object and you forget that, wait, we actually need good computers to actually use AI too. Because if your processor is too slow, like it's just not, ideal to have a, really advanced piece of software on a really old and incapable, hardware.
Also, it's a security risk too, right? I mean, like if
Yeah.
you've out, so I mean, and that was one of the big concerns about security. But if you're working on outdated laptops or slow laptops or potentially like, you know, infested laptops, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, yeah. So
It's strange too, like why the partners won't be like, okay, spend more on laptops, but they'll be like, no, spend everything on AI because that's like, that's going to give us the competitive edge. There doesn't seem to be like, you know, proactive, deep thought around IT investments in law firms, or in the overall economy too. I mean, like you just kind of get distracted by the new shiny object, and there's the whole concept of like technology debt, where you buy a piece of technology and you realize, I need to upgrade everything in order to use this. Essentially, it's like buying a PlayStation 5 when you still have a TV from like the 1990s.
I was just struck by also just kind of how universal this was across so many firms. It's not like one firm is skimping on technology. It's how so many of these firms. It's like, some associated Cahill Gordon saying outdated technology is borderline unusable. One at Deschert, our laptops barely work. I mean, there's quote after quote like that in the story. It just struck me as funny for all the time we spend on this show talking about sophisticated technology. It's like sometimes you just need to pay attention to the basics, I think.
Can't work from home if the computer doesn't work.
Right. How's that Tootsie Pop doing?
You
It's
finished
done.
it, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was quick. That was easy. Okay.
1, 2, a 3.
All right. All right. I don't even know where to go. There's so many stories I want to talk about this week. I thought I actually would talk about a story that I did on this, on a sort of a new wrinkle on the hallucination cases, what I understood to be a new wrinkle on the AI hallucination cases, which was, uh, we talk repeatedly on this show about the importance of lawyers reading the cases and checking the cites, and before they submit a brief. And we've talked about so many cases now where lawyers have been sanctioned in some way for submitting briefs or other court documents with hallucinated cases in them. This was the first I remember. I mean, there may have been others, but it's the first I remember in which it was the opposing counsel who, well, the lawyer who did it in this case got dinged, but also the opposing counsel for failing to notice that their opponent's briefs had hallucinated cases and for failing to alert the court to that. So the court discovered it on its own in going through the briefs, and I guess was none too happy with the lawyers on either side for nobody noticing this. And so the court did sanction the lawyer who filed the hallucinated cases for $10,000, I think it was. but the lawyers on the other side had asked for, this is an appellate level case, so the lawyers had to defend this appeal, and they asked for their attorney's fees and costs, basically as sanctions. And the court said, no, we're not going to give you the attorney's fees and costs because you didn't catch this and you made me catch it. And we still had to go through all this crap. So, it's an interesting case because it raises the issue now of what is an attorney's responsibility to police their opponents rather than just themselves and to check up on their opponents. I mean, again, I would think as a matter of sort of normal course of representing a client in an appeal, you would check the cases in your opponent's brief and read them and make sure they're real. But I don't know. Does this go farther than some of those cases have before?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely farther than they've gone before, but I love it. Yeah, if you put aside the AI level of it, if the opposing counsel is not looking up the cases cited by the other side, then how are they doing their job professionally? I think that's totally sanctionable.
Yeah, yeah.
This struck me as kind of like college honor coding kind of thing. It's like so the cheater gets punished, and then the person who failed to turn in the cheater also gets punished too. It's kind of like, okay, I mean, but here's the thing, right? And I've said this before, and
But they didn't turn in the cheater in this case.
Yes, but I mean, I'm not defending it. I'm not excusing it. But like, it does call into question just how much of motion practice is just BS. Like, you use templates that have the stuff already put in there. Nobody cares what it says because the judge already knows what they're going to do, and just the two sides are just making the record because they have to. It does make you wonder how much of it is just kabuki theater, and that at the end of the day is just yeah. I mean maybe this is calling attention to some of that, but yeah, I mean how often do opposing lawyers even check all the citations or check all the cases to make sure they're being cited properly or being used properly in the things? I don't know.
This was an appeal. I mean, also, it wasn't just motions. It was appellate briefs on an appeal, an intermediate appeal of some kind, but still a little more serious than appellate briefs.
Some days it just feels that all AI has done is surface the incompetence, for lack of a better word, of attorneys,
Right.
and get attorneys frustrated with why do I have to check this if I have AI? Like, what use is AI if we're having to review all this anyway, which we weren't doing in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how these sanctions are getting more and more aggressive. It's issues that existed even before AI, except they haven't been as prominent, perhaps, or as out there since AI. And are courts just getting angrier because they're like, you should be doing this, or is it just you should have been doing this the whole time, but we just
Well,
didn't know, but now we can obviously tell in a sense.
yeah, I was thinking back to like the old days of lawyering before generative AI, and it was I can't remember there ever being a situation I encountered or ever heard about anywhere in which there was a completely made up citation. That wasn't something that happened. I mean, you could if your opponent had a citation in a brief, you could pretty much trust that at least the citation was to a real case, an actual citation. What you still had to check was whether they were citing it correctly, or if there was a quote, whether they were quoting it correctly. Because again, I think I've mentioned this in other shows, but I mean, it was often, people would often just get these like treatises or practice guides where they would just, they'd get a list of string cites out of some treatise article and drop them into a brief without ever reading the cases sometimes. And sometimes some of those cites didn't actually stand for what they were being cited for. So you had to check that. But, you never had to worry, you didn't really have to worry that, is this actually even a real thing? That was never a problem before.
I'm curious too to what extent parties will actually check the citations and documents from opposing counsel just to be we found some sort of fake, we're gonna get you sanctioned, if that's even a strategy. Just it's the party keeping the other party honest, or just trying to be aggressive as they can against it to some extent.
Yeah.
And what's the harm, right? I mean, because like like we were talking about last week, it's the whole point of these tools was to give you time back. Well, you should use it, right? I mean, like what how hard would it be to take what the person filed and put it into your generative AI tool and then have it spit out a bunch of, I mean, maybe then maybe you might get some hallucination on your end too, but yeah, I mean, it will still cut down the check the double checking time by by hours.
Right. All right. What should we talk about next? Small language models or large language models? Reese has stories about large language models. Joe's got a story about small language models. Let's go small and then we'll go big.
Okay. Yeah. So I wrote a thing this week that came out a little late. Let me grab it here because
Is it
it
actually
did.
out now?
Yeah,
read
it
it.
finally. I was working on it
Haven't read it yet.
when our deadline happened. Yeah, no, I figured nobody got a chance, so I get to lie about what it says, and everybody can just believe me. So this goes to a conversation that we've been having kind of since ILTA. I felt one of the takeaways I had at ILTA was I felt as though I was starting to hear murmurings of people caring a little bit more about small and medium-sized models rather than the big. The huge push we've now had for a couple of years of the bigger, the bigger, the bigger, more money, more money, more money. People starting to think, we're investing in somebody who makes small. We, keep our eyes open for smart small models, etc. They're cheaper. If you get actually small, they can be more secure. You can run them locally. But even even in the amongst large models, technically defined large models, there's smaller large models like DeepSeek. And I've kind of been beating the drum that the company that invents the American version of DeepSeek is the one that ultimately dominates the market because I think it's unsustainable, barring some magic wand invention like fusion power or something, to keep driving these large language models, putting in exponentially more resources to get linear gains, according to several studies, is about all you can get. So there were three stories this week that I thought were really interesting to suggest and they weren't really from the world of legal tech, but the world of tech generally. But I think they all pushed this idea that maybe this is the trend that's happening. First of which is Meta came out and said that they were unveiling their small reasoning model. That is big because they've been a little behind on the LLM fight, but they've been very much in it. So the fact that they're now boasting about going small, I thought was very interesting. It's a very niche, as small models are, product. It doesn't deal with everything in the world, but it is interesting that they're going that direction. They also, as I put in my piece, they tried to run their large language model in a live demo, and it embarrassed them. And I have video in my article, so that was so maybe going small is good for them. The other is there's a peer-reviewed paper out in Nature about DeepSeek itself, and among the revelations of this paper, talking about like how DeepSeek did what DeepSeek did, is the explanation that they trained the R1 model for like 290 grand or something like that, which, as one might imagine, is sufficient, is far less, substantially less than all of the other American models spent. And it, according to all the benchmarking, is close to, and in some instances better than those American models, which seems to suggest if you can build these things for the cost of a third-year associate, that seems like something that someone might want to invest in if you're a tech company. And the last one was on this agentic world, not to rehash the problems with agentic, but to the extent one thinks that there's a future in that universe, there's a question of, but doesn't that require large? And the revelation this week in another story is no. That another Chinese, Alibaba's AI group, put out a small agent model that seems to, by all benchmarks, to be performing as well as anything else. So down the line, just right in a row, like like it was like from September 17th through 18th, just like three straight stories over those 48-hour period that all kind of leaned towards small is where the industry might be going, which I think is probably very smart for a lot of reasons. And also, I mean, we're legal. Like we don't it's not going to matter ultimately. This is a joke I have in the story. It's really not going to matter at the end of the day when you're summarizing a deposition that your model was not trained on a GeoCities blog post about bird watching 20 years ago or something like that. Like you don't need everything in order for these models to do what they need to do. And so moving towards something that is more sustainable sounds like a good sign.
It's interesting, like, to even have the incentive to kind of like create these models as cheaply as like DeepSeek was, because I came across a opinion piece in the Washington Post that talked about like, like what's propping up the economy. Tons of like news on the economy this week. And it cited some analysis from the Bureau of Economic Analysis that found the spending on AI is now higher than
Oh, yeah.
consumer consumption spending. So like the AI boom is fueling a giant part of the economy. Like, people are just throwing ridiculous sums of cash all over the place. Can they be built cheaper? But it's obvious that they can. And like this actually ties into what I was hoping to talk about with GPT-5, but that's a whole other thing for short time later. But the question is like, what incentives do we have in this country to make a cheaper, AI tool when it's just been so profitable of like us pouring cash into this industry that's propping up so much of the economy and construction and jobs too.
Yeah, I mean, Nvidia is some ridiculous percentage of the entire stock market at this point. And if it starts to falter, which its earnings the last few quarters have been up, but steadily down from where they had been before, suggesting that growth is slowing, which, probably is going to be a problem down the road. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like the incentive for customers will be to get smaller and smaller, and the incentive for governments will be to keep this gravy train going. And I guess that means some kind of a artificial bailout of taxpayer money to keep the big systems going as they increasingly run out of money, as they're hemorrhaging it right and left. That seems like a longer term problem too.
Oh, that hasn't like ever happened before.
Right. That's funny and true, but also I would question whether it's happened on this scale. Like,
Yeah.
if Nvidia, OpenAI, Anthropic, all these people need to be bailed out given the valuations and the money burn, capex burn that they've got right now, is that bigger than the housing market, a few years ago? Arguably.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reese and I were just talking before we started recording. It made me wonder about what's happened with that Kelvin large language model, which was launched about a year and a half ago. I did a story about it at the time. I think some of others here did, but it's the Michael Bomarito and Dan Katz company where they launched a large, they call it a large language model, but it was actually a smaller language model built on a sort of very specifically chosen set of data and developed specifically for the legal community. Obviously they thought that was the better way to go in terms of developing an LLM for legal. So I'm just bringing that up. I'm not really sure where that stands right now or whether there's been further development of that, but it's interesting. The other thing that comes up in Reese's when we talk about Reese's story is there was I think it was in one of your stories, Reese, that you picked that they kind of are speculating that GPT-5 is actually possibly built on a smaller model than a smaller data set anyway than was actually that a lot of people would think, given the way they're able to price it and whatever else.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Should I
Should we
hop into
move
the
to large?
GPT-5? Yeah,
Seems like a
sorry.
transition.
Yeah, it seems like a transition. I was like, should I just take the bait? Yeah.
Go.
Okay.
Don't wait for me. I'm slow on a Friday afternoon.
So it's actually interesting about like the small language models being like just as sophisticated. Back in like, late 2022, early 2023, I did like an explainer piece on like how Gen AI works. And I talked to a few really intelligent people. And the one thing that really stuck out to me is they said that, like it's, like it was a huge leap from GPT-3 to GPT 3.5, and even GPT-2 to GPT-3. And you're kind of like hitting a threshold where those kind of leaps won't happen like as easily or at all. And the source described it as, like you can get from like 50% to 95%, except it's going to take way, way more to get to 96%, 97%. And it's interesting because the industry ever since GPT 3.5 has been kind of attuned to being like, okay, there's going to be these giant leaps in progress between the Gen AI models. GPT-4 was just kind of like, refining GPT 3.5. It was, like way more advanced, although like it wasn't that huge a leap. And GPT 5, people are quite, like some people have been quite disappointed by it. Um, the problem I think is that like OpenAI wants to kind of make that big splash to be like it's the new GPT. Like, everybody was so obsessed with GPT 3.5 that they were like, oh, GPT 4 and 5 are gonna like destroy the economy and we're gonna have like, crazy stuff happening. No, like that's not how it works. At this point, it's just a marketing thing to call it GPT-5. And it's weird because I recall when GPT 3.5 and GPT-4, well, let me actually back up. When GPT 3.5 became public, it was huge, and all these legal tech companies were advertising that they integrated into their products. There were obviously a few Harvey case stacks who had it like earlier and had a head start. When GPT-4 came out, again, tons of legal tech companies that were like, we're using GPT-4, just press releases everywhere. GPT-5, I saw like 2 press releases, and everybody's like, meh. Access even at like Ilticon said like we're not really using GPT-5. It doesn't really like add anything to what we're doing, and like the capabilities really like aren't that much of a leap from like what we can already do. And I think the issue is that like it's not really now focused on the improvement of each Gen AI model, except like, how can they kind of combine a host of them to kind of do what they're hoping to do. I think like that the industry is starting to understand like we're not going to have those giant leaps anymore. And a model like will be able to do one thing really well, except that won't be like a huge, like leap in terms of its capabilities. And GPT-5 is interesting because it kind of is good for like deep reasoning in a sense, although it's, it produces longer answers. So it's slower and potentially more costly. So it's like, do you even want to use GPT-5? Is it worth the potential added expense and the slowness and speed as well? So it's, like, have we now like reached a threshold where, every model release is just refining like one particular task it can do? And to Joe's point, if that's true, then like why don't we just embrace like smaller language models anyway, as opposed to try, like pretend that we're like leaping through like science fiction level advancements.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like, and I mentioned this in my piece too. Like, the large language models kind of served, it probably are responsible for the existence of these small models. There's this lottery ticket hypothesis that these folks, I think from MIT, came up with, that basically the ability to create a well-weighted and efficient small model requires having giant models and then paring them down, because the odds that you could create a perfectly or an ideally weighted model on your own randomly are astronomical, but for one to develop over the course of a large model is actually possible. And so they've done their part, and they are important for that purpose. But yeah, it was Goldman Sachs's report a year or so ago that raised this idea that they really aren't going to get much better without massively more investment, because it's taking exponential inputs to get linear gains. And if that's where we are, then yeah, we're going to see only from these large people these tiny refinements. And is that worth it? Over the long term. I actually think if I were one of those big people, I'd be trying to build small ones based on owning my lottery ticket combination, basically. Farming off of that, but whatever. I will say just a side question. This is not a topic that we have for today, but did folks see there was a non-legal tech article this week about Thomson Reuters, which this goes to something Reese said in there about going slower. There was an article about Thomson Reuters that I thought was really interesting, because they were talking about their process, and Mike Dane was. It seemed as though the sales pitching point now is it goes slower, and that's good. Which I thought was interesting. In a world where we're talking about going faster and faster and faster, they seem as a sales strategy to be leaning into slow, which I thought was interesting. Let me see if I can find that.
I think it was Business Insider, maybe. I might have
Yeah,
seen that.
somebody like that. Yeah.
It might not be. It might not be a bad idea because I mean, like, I mean, obviously, if it makes mistakes, don't make mistakes. Like, it's not gonna necessarily, like a few extra seconds or minutes, isn't gonna change that. But if they can make it part of their marketing pitch that, well, by going slower, we cut down on your mistakes, so we can, give you a better product or give you a more accurate product. I mean, considering all the stuff we've been talking about on the show, that might not be a bad way to go.
It's kind of like the core of like deep research too. It actually thinks through the problem, kind of like, talks to itself and argues with itself too. So it produces, in theory, way more like accurate answers. The problem is, does anybody have any patience for anything that a piece of technology does anymore? I mean, like, were we sold a promise that they cannot keep, essentially? Like,
Yeah.
like the Gen AI technology they have is incredible. It's been hyped up a lot, and you're starting to peel back the layers, and you're like, it's cool, although if it's going to take like, so long to produce this accurate answer, then what, then like that's going to like eat into our efficiency too. Like, I think people were promised and hoping for something that isn't here yet. And with the resources we currently have will not be here for a while, because you cannot plow any more resources and to get like, a GPT 3.5 level of achievement. I mean, like, people are talking about like energy prices going up because of AI stuff. And I'm like, like we're, ha- we're having a hard time just, plowing the resources we have into this to keep it going. How the hell are we supposed to like, increase those exponentially to have what we want to have?
You said when they first came out, that you only saw a couple of press releases that weren't all that impressive from them. Maybe OpenAI should have had a nice event like Zuckerberg had this week to introduce the new Ray-Ban glasses, and that would have been a really effective way to show off the capabilities.
Yeah. And that was interesting. The Ray-Ban the new Ray-Ban smart glasses was a largely successful announcement right up until they did the AI component
Until
of
they
it
showed it.
when it failed miserably. But the rest of it looked cool, kind of
But
cool.
it was the
But
Wi-Fi.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's
the
the Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
It was only the internet. It's always the internet.
Well,
That was really
that's why
cool.
you always be careful with the live demos, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think what was the conference we all went to last year where they actually pulled it off? Where we were like, oh shit, the live demo worked. We were shocked because it's more likely
yeah,
than not it's going to fail.
Yeah, yeah,
It's actually interesting. In like the earlier days of GPT 3.5 and GPT 4, people would do live demos of their Gen AI tools. And because so many people were like on ChatGPT or just using OpenAI's models, like the bandwidth would crash and people doing live demos would just be like, yeah, this just doesn't work from time to time. And I'm like, oh, nobody told you about that part.
yeah. So the kind of the differences, building on this topic of some of the differences between the commercial AI products and the legal AI products. Another story this week was this new benchmarking study, yet another benchmarking study that came out. There still haven't been all that many benchmarking studies, but this one was looking at AI for contract drafting. And I thought the really interesting thing about it was that, I mean, first of all, it found that for most contract drafting purposes, AI did better than human lawyers in producing reliable contract drafts. And but what was also interesting, I thought, was in this study they found that the general models did better than the legal specific contract drafting models. And and generally in terms of the outputs and the quality of the outputs, as a matter of fact, their top performing AI tool, what they found was Gemini 2.5 Pro, which had achieved in their testing a 73.3% reliability rate. Uh, their best human lawyer out of their comparison group achieved a 70% reliability rate, and most of them were actually much lower. That was interesting, I think, to see both that AI is consistently outperforming human lawyers in basic, simple drafting tasks. And again, they did make a distinction between sort of more sophisticated um, types of tasks where you still need lawyers, but in more routine drafting tasks, the AI did better, and that the commercial ones did better than the legal ones. The one area where the legal ones, the one sort of rating area where the legal ones outperformed the commercial ones were in workflow integration, because they all tended to be, working right within Microsoft Word, and of course lawyers like that, and so those got higher marks for their integration, but not necessarily for what they were putting out. And I shouldn't downplay. I mean, some of the legal ones did quite well on it, but still, it was an interesting comparison, I thought.
It's interesting that Gemini scored so well. I haven't really heard too much about Gemini except for being the annoying thing integrated into Google search now. Um, I'm curious too as to like why like the general models outperform the legal specific ones, especially on contract drafting.
Yeah.
Which perhaps just goes into like what were they training the legal ones on, or like what, like what went into the legal ones specifically, because the legal obviously huge field could be a lot of things.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if anybody else read the study yet. It just came out. I think it was Wednesday or something that came out. But the choice, I don't know that they really explained the choice of the companies that they evaluated, or if the companies had to maybe put themselves into it. But Some of them were ones, honestly, I hadn't even heard of. A couple of them. August, I had not heard of August, but apparently that's an AI contract drafting tool. And Brackets was another one I'm really not familiar with, but they did have some, and then they had one in there that they identified as anonymous, which they described as an established enterprise level, AI contract drafting tool, but they didn't identify it. So it seemed to be the focus was really more on kind of newer entrants to the market. And so that may have had some implications for the overall results of the benchmarking.
I will say that Gen AI has definitely seemed to like reinvigorate the contract technology in CLM space in recent years. This just kind of goes to prove it to some extent. It's interesting that they also looked at like contract technology startups because they're probably essentially using the same general models that they're testing against.
Yeah,
So perhaps
yeah.
there's like overlap there. It's like, let me test Gemini against some contract tool that uses Gemini, OpenAI, Claude. I mean, Anthropic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
I've heard Gemini is like really good for image generation, and I was trying to get it to do something this week along those lines, and it was very frustrating because it was like the old days of Gen AI. It got the words all wrong, and I kept trying to get it to correct the words, and it wouldn't do it. And I wanted a wide format image, and I had specified a wide format 16:9 image, and it kept giving me a square, and I kept saying, but that's not wide format. And it would say, oh, yes, you're right. Let me fix that. And then it would give me another square again. I went back and forth. I finally gave up and went to ChatGPT.
Hey,
Just getting thinking.
did the study say what Gemini used to train their AI? Like, was it like just publicly available contracts, or was like their own private stash of contracts at Google? Like,
This didn't say anything like that in the benchmarking study that I
I'd be curious
recall.
about that. Yeah.
I don't know whether the appendix, I didn't dig through the appendix. There might have been something there. I don't recall seeing anything like that, though.
I mean,
So,
I would assume
yeah.
Google would have. I mean, if they did train off their own stuff, I would assume they would have like a ton of contracts that they could like, probably a lot more contracts available to them as opposed to some of the more proprietary ones, the legal ones. But I mean, I don't know for sure.
Yep.
I will say too, it's good to see like, a benchmarking study. We definitely need way, way more of them. Like the only other one I can recall specifically on Gen AI is like the Val's AI one, I believe. And I believe they're coming out with a new study on a particular sector of the legal industry and what Gen AI can do in it. Although, as we've heard from the reaction to the Stanford benchmarking study, for sure, there needs to be way more, um, studies in this field, and that hasn't yet seemed to materialize at all.
Yeah.
Seems to just be, everybody's like, yeah, I'm sure it's fine. And I'm like, it's strange how the user experience with tools can sometimes be so different from what everybody is hearing out there in the market, I guess. And I guess that's why we're all here to kind of bridge that gap.
That's why we're here. Um, Anybody got anything else? If not, we could talk about the Bluebook briefly, which is another story I had this week. I didn't see anything else in the story log. Let me know if I'm missing anything else that you guys put in the story log here, but we've a light log this week. But there
I used
was
to have I used to have my blue book here somewhere, but I can't find it now.
yeah, I've still got like my print edition of the Blue Book somewhere. Who knows where, but
I mean, I
maybe
have a
maybe.
version, but it's like 15 versions ago at this point, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, so it just came out what 22nd? Is that what it was? The 22nd edition, 23rd, something like that. Anyway, the story there, here's my story, was that it's met with some controversy. They came up with a new edition. They released, I think it was this last May. They released it, but it attempts to add a doesn't attempt. It does add a section on citing to Gen AI, and in the proper format for citing to Gen AI. And it has elicited a bevy of articles from legal academics and law librarians and others saying, well, as one law professor put it, this is bonkers. It just seems to make no sense. It seems to totally misunderstand how people use AI. It's really unclear as to when you would want to cite to AI. I mean, for the most part, you're using AI to find something, and once you found it, you would cite to what you found. You wouldn't cite to AI. And so it's a kind of an interesting controversy. I actually reached out to the editors of the Blue Book, and not surprisingly, they did not respond to me. So I haven't heard anything from them in terms of a response. And there's not really any kind of rationale for how they arrived at this rule. But it's just kind of confusing. The biggest criticism is that there's just no guidance as to when you should be citing to AI versus, again, citing to an original source that you might have found through AI or something like that. And it even has a rule for sort of citing to AI-powered search engine results. But again, when you use a search engine, you're not citing to the search engine, you're citing to the results you find through the search engine. So I don't know. It sounds like the Blue Book authors might have contributed to confusion about how to cite to materials rather than clarification in this case.
It's kind of strange how they say AI-powered search engine. Technically, search engines have been AI-powered for decades.
Right.
Different types of AI, but nobody cared before Gen AI, and now you're having to search to the specific search. I mean, cite this specific search engine just because it uses a different type of AI.
Well, and what
Yeah.
does that entail? Like, is it like if you're citing like, okay, what comes first in the results, or are you citing like the stuff in Google now where you type it in and it gives you like an answer? Is that what you would be citing to? Like, I don't know.
It's not clear. And the other problem, one of the things they want you to do is include your prompt. They said the exact text of your prompt. And again, as several of these authors who wrote about it, I cite to, I link to several of the stories in my blog post. But you know, you are rarely using a sort of one sentence prompt if you're actually trying to dig into something using generative AI. You may be having a series of prompts. You may upload some documents or something to help inform the prompts. And what exactly is it you're supposed to quote? And then you're supposed to keep a PDF of a screenshot of the prompt. Is it of the prompt or of the results? I forget what it is. Um, and I don't know what you do with that. I mean, save that in perpetuity somewhere. Like somebody going to start a whole business of saving all these PDF screenshots of people's searches or something. I don't know what happens with that, but it's really kind of funny.
Sometimes the platforms will suggest prompts to kind of dive deeper into a topic you're searching. So you don't even write the prompt sometimes. You just like select from three pre-written prompts to drill down on whatever. Is that something you also have to add to that as well in this like citation?
I mean, I don't know. I don't
This
even
actually
know.
strikes me as like when the judges were doing their standing orders on you need to disclose what AI tools you use to create the documents before the court, essentially. And that could be like anything and everything if they just call it AI instead of defining what they mean, I guess, in that instance.
Yeah, that was actually another criticism of this, is that it could conflict with judicial court orders or standing orders on AI citation. But I'm not sure I see that, because if you're in a particular court that has a particular order about how to cite to AI, then you're going to follow that, not something else. But anyway,
It's just an instance of like people who don't seem to understand AI trying to get ahead of AI just for the sake of it.
I was reading Mary's thing. Yeah, the whole thing about where the PDFs are stored, it's very confusing. It's like, and what would how would anybody ever access them or get to them? I don't know. But,
And how would they know? Because if you use this, it'll be like this one is like explain the hearsay rule in Kentucky or something like that. And you're asking ChatGPT or whatever. Uh, but then you could cite it to like something else, right? You could cite it to like, some treatise or like some, just say, oh, well, I looked it up and blah, blah, blah. Instead of saying that you use ChatGPT to explain it to you. I mean, right? I mean,
yeah.
you just,
Yep.
And also, this is probably too far out there. Some people don't type in prompts. They talk to, their Gen AI platform. And I
Although it would then
assume some
put
people actually prefer that, but the platform can probably then, come up with a transcript, I assume.
yeah. Doesn't it convert it to text anyway? If you speak your prompt, it puts it in as a text prompt.
Oh, I have no idea. I haven't
No.
spoken to AI yet.
What do you do at night?
Like, how do you sleep? Yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
just read the bedtime stories out loud by myself is what I do. Yeah.
all right. All right. Anything else anybody wanted to bring up? Next week, Joe can bring Tootsie Pops for all of us. Actually, there may not be a show next week because I'm going to be traveling on Friday. I'm going to look at my schedule, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be back in time. I'm going to I think it's called the CX Summit. It's the company called K Status is having its first ever conference in Charleston, South Carolina. So if anybody's in Charleston, check it out. And
Sounds awesome. I was always hoping to go to check out Charleston. It hasn't, like all this historical stuff to go check out.
it's a pretty place.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
yeah, but how much time do you get? How much time do you get during conferences to like check out a lot of historical stuff, though? I mean, yeah.
Uh, I'm
I will
going in
be
We'll
with,
like
at
add it to
the
the schedule. Yeah.
I will be at the lunch hour legal marketing convention next week, and I will check out all the historical sites of Check's Notes, the Vegas Strip. So,
you can
Well,
visit
you could
Paris
go
and
to like the old strip. Like that's pretty historical.
I mean, you can go to Circus Circus. I wouldn't advise it, but you could.
Yeah, and, stuff happens on the strip, I mean,
Yeah.
well, have fun there. All right, I think that does. I think our Manel has done all the mansplaining it's going to be able to do for today, and we I'll confirm whether I'm around next week or not. If not, we'll be back in 2 weeks, I hope, and see you all around. Hope you all have a good week.
Cool. Take it easy.